Mr. Niehaus, I hope you can hear me and that we'll be able to hear you this time around. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon to get your reaction on this. Now, Mr. Niehaus, what is the MKMVA's reaction to the judgment by the Constitutional Court?
MKMVA is absolutely outraged by this totally unjustifiable 15-month sentence that had been imposed on President Zuma. We believe that President Zuma was absolutely correct to refuse to attend the Zondo Commission under the biased chairpersonship of the Deputy Chief Justice. And he was also correct not to participate in the 2 legal hearings of the Constitutional Court that now led to this outrageous judgment that had been passed on him. From our side, we call on our members, on all ANC members, and in fact on all peace-loving and democratically loving South Africans to now come out and protest against this unjustifiable sentence and to say very clearly that we will not allow President Zuma to be arrested and to be imprisoned.
Mr. Niehaus, have you spoken to the former president on whether he will hand himself over to the police or not?
I cannot speak on behalf of President Zuma. I can speak on behalf of MKMVA. And MKMVA states very clearly that we do not want President Zuma to be arrested and to be imprisoned. We believe that this is a political targeting of President Zuma, that it is a factional behavior from the side also of the courts, which are allowing themselves now be used in factional political battles. And we call on the political leadership of the African National Congress also to now come out clear and not allow President Zuma, who is one of the greatest liberation leaders that we've seen in South Africa, to be arrested and to be imprisoned. This will be an injustice that is entirely unacceptable. It will be a bridge too far. And as we've warned before, this can lead to great political instability and division within our country, which we do not want to see.
Now, according to the acting Justice Kampepe, the judgment is unappealable. Of course, you are saying that that's not fair, given the fact that according to the justices, the former president will have the opportunity to file responding affidavits, a due process of the court, which he subsequently failed to do. I mean, he had ample opportunity to represent himself, but he chose not to.
Well, as you recall, when these matters was rushed to the Constitutional Court by the Deputy Chief Justice, President Zuma was already appealing the decision of the Deputy Chief Justice not to recuse himself to the High Court, which is a lower court. It was really unacceptable for the Constitutional Court to proceed with this matter under those circumstances. And we feel absolutely aggrieved that President Zuma is being treated in this targeted fashion. The whole Zondo Commission had clearly been set up to target him. That was also acknowledged by the former public protector, Advocate Thuli Madonsela, who said that the commission had in fact been set up specifically to target President Zuma. Now we have a situation where President Zuma's right to remain silent and at the same time, his rights in terms of how he presents himself to a lower court before the matter has to be heard in the highest court, namely the Constitutional Court, have all been undermined. This is a travesty of justice. And in fact, what we are faced with here is our courts now clearly being captured. We're living now under a dictatorship of the judiciary, and we're living in a situation where the courts have now become a tool for factional political battles to target certain politicians while others are totally being left off the hook.
Mr. Niehaus, you released a video via social media, Twitter to be specific, earlier, where you were calling on ANC members, to also reject this judgment. And now I'm hearing you say that you want people to protest this judgment. What form of protest are you thinking of at the moment? I mean, I also saw a tweet earlier, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, from Mr. Zuma's daughter, and she was basically saying that we have a choice between serving our time in Joburg or Nkandla. Of course, we have chosen to be close to home. Lockdown or no lockdown, we will escort you to serve your time. Now, going back to my question, is there some form of protest that you are organizing? Are you in collaboration with Mr. Zuma's family?
Well, obviously, there's going to be protest. And obviously, we're going to utilize our constitutional right of freedom of speech that all of us have fought so hard for. So I'm busy protesting right now as I'm talking to you, expressing my outrage on behalf of Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association about this sentence. And at the same time, as you correctly say, I have called, and Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association also issued a media statement calling on all our members, in fact on all ANC members, and on all South Africans who are outraged by what has happened this morning, to stand up, to protest against this, obviously within the parameters of the law, but making use of our constitutional right to protest against this abuse of our constitution and the undermining of the rights, the legitimate rights of one of our most important citizens, President Zuma. His rights being undermined, his rights being compromised, means that the rights of all of us, including myself and every other citizen in this country, are also being undermined and compromised.
Now, I'm asking you this question in terms of what protest or what form of protest you will take, because I want to know the responsible manner in which the MKMVA will be handling themselves over the next couple of days. I'm also asking you this because I know that there are some members of the MKMVA who are currently camped outside Nkandla, the former president's home in Nkandla, as we speak. Now, are they there to, to form solidarity? Are they there responsibly? Will they disperse now that there is an outcome of this judgment?
Well, first of all, they will not disperse. Secondly, they will obviously behave in a responsible way, as I've just said to you, because we will act on this in terms of the correct legal processes and in terms of our constitution. But let me emphasize to you that we are increasingly beginning to feel that the imposition of this level 4 COVID-19 regulations just 2 days ago had a direct intention to try and curb the outrage and the protest that was going to happen because of this judgment. So we are very concerned, but we are being brought into a situation where there's an attempt to muzzle legitimate protest by making use of COVID-19 regulations. And under the circumstances, we are really very concerned because our members and many other members of the population in South Africa are evidently going to come out in protest about this. People are outraged, and they are legitimately outraged.
Now, when she was giving her judgment again, Justice Sisi Kompepe said that Mr. Zuma had no regard for the rule of law. And I'm listening to you talking about just some of...
Can I interrupt you? Sorry.
No problem.
Some of your media people in the background are not muted. They are talking. I have to listen to them and to you. Can they please be asked to go off the line, because otherwise it's not possible for me to hear your questions clearly.
I apologize for that, Mr. Niehaus. Do you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but I can still hear them too. And that is really not an acceptable situation for a proper interview.
No, I totally agree with you. Perhaps let me do this. Let's interrupt this interview and come back to it if you have time for us, because there's still a number of issues that I would like to table with you, Mr. Niehaus, particularly in the next coming days, because we also know that the NEC is meeting to decide on this judgment as well, and I know that you have also called on the ANC to do the right thing. So when we
They seem to have gone silent now, so perhaps we can try to do the interview. I hope that they will keep quiet now.
Fantastic. All right. So what I was asking you is, I'm hearing you saying that there is something sinister around level 4 that we are currently in, which was probably in direct response to prevent you to exercise your legal right, as you say, to protest. I also made reference to the fact that Justice Sisi Kompepe, in her judgment, said that she found that former President Jacob Zuma had no regard for the rule of law. Also, obviously, talking about the stature and of the man himself and how his responses and his actions could have a direct effect on how the public also acts. So I'm asking you, is it the most responsible thing for you to do at this moment when we are under a restriction during a pandemic? We've also heard from the SAPS minister saying that anybody who's found to contravene will be jailed up to 6 months.
Look, we do not want to contravene the COVID-19 regulations. But at the same time, we have to ask the question whether these regulations, in the rush that they have been imposed in the context of this major political development, a political development that has the potential to cause a massive shift in the politics of South Africa, whether that had not been done deliberately. I have to ask that question, and I'm not wrong to do so. At the same time, I do want to emphasize to you that we will try to abide by the COVID-19 regulations, because clearly we are concerned about human life and we do not want to endanger the lives of people. But you have to understand that there is a massive outrage, which is, as you and I are speaking right now, rising throughout our country. People are deeply, deeply disturbed by what has happened this morning. And I do not agree with the statement that the acting Chief Justice made by saying that President Zuma does not have regard for the law. President Zuma articulated his concerns about the manner in which he had been treated by the Zondo Commission and also by the Constitutional Court, and the manner in which his most basic right, the right to remain silent when he does not want to incriminate himself, had been undermined by the Constitutional Court. How all of these issues, in fact, is an expression of President Zuma's deep commitment to the Constitution and to the rule of law. When we as Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association visited President Zuma at Nkandla, he said to us that he himself, as one of the most senior leaders of the ANC, one of the most senior commanders of Umkhonto we Sizwe, had worked for the adoption of our current constitution, and that he felt himself obliged to resist any undermining, any eroding of the constitutional rights that he or himself fought so hard for. And under those circumstances, he cannot have a situation where he could abide by the call by the Constitutional Court for him to appear in front of the Zondo Commission, and also he could not participate in those proceedings of the Constitutional Court. So it was a principled position that President Zuma took, and he wrote letters of tens of pages explaining that not just to the justices, but to all of us as citizens of South Africa. And I would strongly urge people to go back to that correspondence by President Zuma and to read it and to understand why he had taken this principled position. I also want to remind you about the audio that came out from the meeting that President Zuma had with the top 6 of the African National Congress, where he said very clearly and straightforwardly to that leadership, and specifically to President Ramaphosa, I feel that you are biased against me. I feel that you are not prepared to protect me. I feel that you are allowing this legal process to be used for political reasons, and that I am being targeted politically and unfairly.
All right, Mr. Niehaus, thank you so much for your time. That's where we have to leave it for now. Carl Niehaus, rather, speaking there on behalf of the MKMVA. Now, after this quick break, we will be going to one of our reporters who is currently in Nkandla just to see how developments are happening right there. All right, we'll come back to her right after this. Stay with us.